Hello.
Hello, is this Aoife Gallagher by any chance?
Hi. Sorry, 2 seconds. I just can't hear you very well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm just,
Yep.
my name's Reen, I'm calling from the account Irish Students Against Fascism. Just wondering if you have a few minutes to talk.
Yeah, go on ahead. Sorry, I didn't catch your name there. What did you say it was?
Reen?
Rian. R-A-I-A-N?
R-I-A-N.
Yeah, perfect. Did you
Yeah,
give me a surname? I didn't know.
cool. It may just leave first name terms at the moment.
That's no worries. Yeah, go on ahead.
Yeah, so basic introduction of who we are and what we do. We're
Mm-hmm.
basically a collective of sort of anti-fascist students on campus and assorted activists across the country.
Yeah.
We came together about 18 months ago, and what we've been doing has been sort of creating a sort of database of the far right agitators on campuses, far right agitators further afield, and we're hoping to go live with the sort of information at the end of the month.
Yeah.
And basically what we're doing is reaching out to sort of civic society bodies and people in sort of media to sort of help amplify our findings.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously with your sort of background with Storyful, you'd be a sort of prime candidate for helping get this info out there.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Well, I'll just give you a bit of an idea of how Storyful works
Yeah.
because, so what we do, we work with other news agencies. So we pretty much have clients in other news agencies that we use. The only issue that I would imagine here is that we only work with one Irish client, which is the Times Ireland or the Sunday Times. And so in that respect, when it comes to stories like this, we need to kind of be, aware of what their editorial standards are for publishing stories like this. And a lot of, publications, I'm sure you know yourself, are a bit weary of, when it comes to reporting on the far right, it's kind of that, should you leave them just shout themselves in their own echo chamber instead of amplifying them? So I'll just I just want you to be aware of
Yeah,
that.
that's fair. The
Just
key thing for
before we
ourselves
start.
is you yourself, you're good at working sort of anti-fascist actors, so to speak.
Yeah,
Grant,
yeah,
that's perfect.
yeah.
Yeah. Please go on.
So I'm kind of just wondering, just a couple of kind of more or kind of broad questions. Like, what do you define yourselves as like fascist activity on campuses?
Fascists does engage in sort of hardline, reactionary, mainly sort of anti-choice, mainly sort of xenophobic, racist
Yeah,
organisation, the general sort of ballpark definition. And like for example, some of the members are probably we've sort of reported on as sort of more the extreme element of YFG, Young Fine Gael, and just sort of rightward from there.
yeah.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, obviously it's not. It's some of the stuff we found is it's noteworthy, so to speak. It's not minor. But
hmm
tell me about some of the work you, curious yourself. You've done some work with sort of Storyful, sort of like investigating the far right yourself.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, I kind of became very interested in because I was working a lot at the time of the Eighth Amendment or the referendum on the Eighth Amendment, and that was kind of when we saw a lot of them kind of rising to the surface, and I just kind of kept an eye on them since, to be honest, because I mean, as you know yourself, it has just kind of, it's grown in the past like year and a half, definitely. So kind of the stuff that I would look for, again, because I am a little bit hamstrung by the publishers that we work with. I mean, if I was working for, The Independent or someone like that there, I think I'd be a lot more, I'd be given a lot more freedom to kind of,
Yeah.
to research stuff like this, really. But so kind of the stuff that I've done, like around the protests, the draft provision protests that were happening towards the end of last year. So especially the one in Uachtarard. So I did a big piece of research, for the Sunday Times back in September, kind of like exposing how members of the far right had infiltrated local Facebook groups and were sharing, very, very very far right content into
Yeah.
these Facebook groups to kind of, stir up anti-immigrant sentiment across,
Okay.
in these localized areas. And I mean, that's something that's continuing to happen. I don't know if you're aware of the protests that are happening in
Yeah.
Mulhunters at the
The
moment as
the
well.
latest was
And
latest
yeah,
was Boris Kane, or I think there's
yeah,
one closer before then.
yeah,
But
yeah,
just you
exactly.
mentioned sort of monitoring these groups. Obviously, this is at your
Yeah.
discretion. But would you be okay with sort of like giving us sort of word just for our own sort of because what we're hoping to do is sort of create a sort of database for like left activists and overall. So any sort of names, any sort of content that you come across that could be of note, we'd be appreciative of just letting us know.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, the way I kind of monitor it at the moment, I don't really have a specific. I mean, I use tools like CrowdTangle and things like that. Do you know how CrowdTangle works?
No,
So
no.
CrowdTangle is it's a Facebook owned tool, but it lets you kind of like either like create these lists, like lists of Facebook pages, lists of Facebook groups, and kind of monitor them in a stream. So instead of like having to go to each group all the time, you can just create a list and it'll like show you the posts in a stream, and it's very easy to kind of like search through the posts. You can download CSVs and stuff like that. So that's kind of one of the main ways that I would keep an eye on that kind of element. I'd also, like, I do keep an eye on the 4chan element as well.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. That's probably the more sort of murkier side.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So I do, and Storyful are like a running joke on 4chan because we have done a bit of work kind of about like exposing like activities on there. So like anyone that they think is an infiltrator, they call it a story faggot, I think is the term that they use. So honestly, I kind of look at it more for entertainment purposes, but I mean, they have targeted me on there quite a few times. I mean, I've had my photos.
So you kind of just monitor these threads on it's 4chan, it's not 8chan.
Yeah, well, 8chan's gone.
Okay.
So 4chan is the only one left standing.
Okay, so you just obviously we've started doing it recently. You just in your instance further, you just simply monitor the threads. You wouldn't use any sort of app.
Yeah. So, like on 4chan, I'm not sure if you're aware. There's a thread posted every evening on 4chan called Aeropol, as in it's EFODA-IRE/P. Yeah. So that would kind of be the one. I would take a look through it like maybe once a week or something like that there, just to make sure there's nothing super untoward going on. But a lot of the time, as I say, because the bar is pretty high for publishing things around these kind of characters, you do have to wait until there's some kind of, until they take some kind of direct action that actually affects people. We can't really just be reporting on shit that people say on the internet.
Yeah. But just in any of the things that kind of passed by, just on 4chan specifically, would there be anything of note?
Not as of recent. I'd say the last time that I reported on something like that would have been, do you know when Justin Barrett got a milkshake thrown at him in Galway?
Ayr Square, yes. I was near enough anyway.
Yeah. So there were quite a few, there were threatening posts against the girl who actually threw the milkshake. There were a lot of threatening posts on 4chan, and I kind of sent that over to the Times at the time, just been like, if you're interested in this, and they did publish it then at the time. That was probably the last thing that I've really seen that, has, again, it has to have that kind of element that it's going to,
Yeah, I was just saying, how would you, firstly, any sort of like minds for sort of publicising any sort of findings we find? And obviously yourself, but just for sort of cultivating just a story, any just general sort of tips?
Well, I would just make sure, I mean, obviously when it comes to publishing stories, the more high profile the people are that you're looking at, the better. I mean, people are not really going to look at stories that just involve random students, you know what I mean? If there's, if there happens to be like, lecturers or professors in these colleges.
That's probably more what we're kind of like. It's not just college gossip, but this way. But anyway, it's you're saying just for sort of like for spreading a sort of story. How would you go about doing that?
Well, again, it would just depend on what exactly you have. Do you know what I mean? It'd be fairly hard for me to tell at the moment without knowing what exactly you have. But I would say, the more high profile, the better. If you can, if you can link to kind of events, I would just have as much evidence as possible, to be honest. It's a very sketchy thing to do, and I'm sure you know yourself. Yeah. The dangers that you are going to put yourself into by exposing things like this is not going to be pleasant at all. Yeah. So just make sure you have, whatever evidence you think that you think points towards these people actually contributing to the rise of far right activity. If you can, I'm talking about video evidence of them, spoofing off racist ideologies or anything like that. Like any kind of, if there are people like spreading things like the Great Replacement conspiracy theory across campuses, like I would find that very worrying. And kind of anything that's, if you can see them kind of spinning lies to fit their own narrative and things like that.
Yeah. Just another thing. Obviously, I'm kind of I have sort of a bit of a journalistic background myself, but how would you sort of maintain a sort of two faces? Obviously, you condemn these people, but how would you sort of report in a sort of seemingly neutral way, but obviously not a sort of neutral way, just as a journalistic point.
Yeah. Well, in Storyful, we have to take a very objective approach for things. So, I mean, what we would send to the Times and the Sunday Times would be a very, very objectified report, and then they would take what we have and they would fit it to their editorial standards. So, for example, we would never actually label someone as far right because it's too vague.
Yeah.
So we would label them as anti-immigrant protesters or anti-immigrant activists, or conspiracy theorists. You could definitely use the word conspiracy theorists for a lot of them. But so you just have to be very careful with your language, because, far right, people on the far right don't like being called far right, but if you call them anti-immigrant protesters, that's, they can't argue with that because that's what they do.
Yeah.
So you just really have to be careful in the way you word things. And I mean, if you do have a journalistic background, yourself, checking your sources, making sure that they're accurate, and getting comments from, people on both sides, I think, as well. I don't know.
It's a whole sort of ballpark to open up, but just generally any sort of like minds and sort of the journalistic world, any sort of context that we could make use of ourselves, just off the top of your head.
As in people, journalists, exactly?
Yeah.
Has anyone else got in touch with you? I know you tagged a couple of people on that.
We had a few sort of more sort of left activists, but anything just that you know off the top of your head that obviously...
Times has done quite a bit, kind of similar stuff to what I did around Gerard.
Yeah.
But again, I'd say people might be a little...
Hello? Sorry, you cut out there. There would be a little what, sorry?
I said people might be a little bit weary of this, so I would just be aware of that. But
he'd be a solid sort of sympathetic voice to what we do,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, as well might be, but she kind of deals more with
migration policy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if she'd be exactly interested in that. In some way might be interested in it, but it's kind of hard to tell as well with her. I mean, she is very interested in that kind of elements of what's going on.
I'd be appreciative if you just want to, if possible, if you want to message them. Obviously, our DMs are open ourselves. We can deal discreetly, but there's some stories, certainly. There's definitely sort of, and certainly as well. There's potential stories for them or something I know for them. Finishing up, any just sort of just my own notes, any sort of general tips on sort of reporting the far right from your experience, or beyond what you said?
Do you know what I would do? I would stalk herself online and make sure that anything that they can find, just make sure that make sure your Facebook is locked down. Make sure they can't see anything that you don't want them to see. Because honestly, if they find, I know maybe they don't know who you are, but I'm sure there is probably someone who will figure out who you are. Do you know what I mean? So just for yourself personally, I would really, really make sure that
there's a collective of us, so it's probably not like obviously we're more anonymous than like yourself. But just sorry, I had a list of questions there. So you're happy to have sort of a positive relationship with us and sort of anti-fascism. That's your grand regards that. Obviously you have your own sort of
well, as I say, I'm going to have to wait and see what you actually have before.
That's fair.
That's all right. But I mean, I'm open to seeing what you have, definitely.
Cool. And obviously, if anything comes your way, our DMs are open. We've more sort of a network that we can kind of pass it on to. But if you want to message on those people, obviously, first off, they're interested. We're hoping to sort of get this live at the end of the month, and hopefully there'll be a story or two for yourself. But pleasure for your time, Aoife.
Yourself. Okay. All right. Have a good day.
Bye.
All right. Bye.